Hey everyone, are you looking for ways to drive customer loyalty through service? You are in the right place. My name is Anne Marie Johnson, and we're joined by our friends at CallRevu today, and that's what we're going to be talking about. So, we're going to focus on ways that you can focus on driving loyalty, focusing on service with empathy, timely follow ups, and using personalized experiences. And joining us, we're going to have Andrew Spitzer, COO of Spitzer Auto Group, and also 2022's recipient of 40 Under 40, as well as Scott Bledsoe. He is Vice President of Product at CallRevu. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to our hosts, Paul and Kyle, and hope you enjoy.
Hey, thanks, Anne Marie.
What's up?
What's up, Kyle? I haven't seen you in a minute.
A whole 1 minute.
Literally a literal minute. It's so much fun to be with our friends at CallRevu today. There's some interesting things in the pre-meeting to this webinar. We learned a few things about the dealer we're going to have on today, Andrew, and just the legacy of his organization. Maybe we have time for him to tell the story, but if not, back to 1904, and they still have the hardware store that was the business that is now a fourth generation dealer. So like that always gets me excited because we're talking about literally the same things today as they were probably talking about back in 1904, which is how do we make the customer experience and take care of the people that walk into our store? Back then it wasn't virtually, but but it was in person, but still, how do you take care of the customer? And, there's the situation we're in.
Set that stage, because you think about that just from a like what was happening at a hardware store in 1904, right? It's a community hardware store in a tight community. And I bet there were people, everybody knew everybody, and the customer care and the way that you needed to engage with a person across the table was extremely important because you were the hometown store. And look, if you didn't care for that person across the table, like if your mulch wasn't right or your hammer broke or anything like that, they were coming for you. And so I think that tying that forward to what we're talking about today, which is creating a loyal community around your dealership, specifically through service and owning that customer experience. Like it actually ties in. It's nothing has changed yet everything has changed.
That's right.
I mean, right now we are seeing massive shifts in the industry. It seems like every 24 hours, right, Paul? Some of the macroeconomic things that are contributing to just the need to focus more and more on customer loyalty are we've got this interest rate piece and the lack of inventory that are interest rates continuing to drive up, lack of inventory not coming fully back. And what's happening is people are keeping their vehicles longer and longer, right?
Yeah.
We've got, S&P Mobility just said that the average age of a vehicle on the road today is 12 years. It's the first time that's ever happened.
Ever. Yeah. And if you see, cars 13, light trucks 11. So in the average in the middle, there's 12. And I mean, when you look around and even when you talk to dealers, we get the chance to spend some time in service lanes and dealers all over the country. And without a doubt, like that average mileage in is going up. It's starting to be something that people are tracking. And, this other new data point that I just saw for the first time as we were doing prep for the show is that there's a 20% increase in people buying their vehicle off lease. Wow. So today we're 20% higher than we were between 2019 and 2022, according to a CNBC Cox study. And just another indicator that service is becoming more important. And we know that oftentimes the service department is where the first impressions start, right? It's the gateway into Google reviews, right? A lot more service opportunities than sales opportunities. And, Kyle, you and I talk about hospitality quite a bit when it comes to automotive because,
Absolutely.
Even service, we're saying like it's still like a level of retail.
Yeah, it absolutely is a level of retail. Service even more because you have like a more regular customer that's coming in. You think of any retail establishment that you go into, whether you're buying fashion or consumer packaged goods, you're doing that on a regular basis, whether that be weekly or quarterly. And so this is a place where at least biannually, we're seeing these customers purchasing something from the dealership. And like you said just a second ago, that a lot of times this is the front door, because you've got so many independent stores, so many other stores, or maybe a used car was purchased at another franchise. At the front door, the first impression, the opportunity to keep a customer for a lifetime is actually the service department, and that's the driver of retention into sales. And so every single aspect of that visit, from pre-appointment, on the phone, on the website, anywhere, is extremely important to that customer's journey through the service department. The service appointment doesn't start when they step foot in.
Oh no. Oh no. So I'm thinking about this. So it's starting to shape up in my mind. I love when like new thoughts come, right? So
just all the way right there. Yeah.
We've been talking about, so we've been talking about like buying cars and the sales process being very similar to retail. And now we're like talking about this. It's almost like the service is almost more like hospitality and like going to a restaurant where there's like a dance going on, right? When you go into a restaurant, there's a dance, there's a vestibule, there's a reservation system, there's a host a host or hostess that greets you. And then you see all these moving parts happening all around you. And service is really very similar to that. And that, like maybe like the phone call in is more like your experience in the vestibule, like walking through,
Right.
because there's an element of the expectation is set from that first contact. And maybe it is the reservation platform that they use, but there's an expectation that's set in hospitality. And immediately you're either like put at ease, or the hands go up, right? And you start to feel like, do I have to be on the defense?
Absolutely. And then you just think about the next layer of that, from just a relationship with service. It's a full dance. You've got the front of house and the back of the house, and the back of house has the expediter and the line cook, and you got the chef, and they're all working together to make sure that you're having a great guest experience. And really, like you said, the parking lot, the vestibule, every piece of that is a part of, you could have the greatest steak in the world, right? Fix the car perfectly, 100% every single time. But if all the orchestra isn't working together, then the steak doesn't taste so good.
That's true. And the review isn't going to be so good. And the tip isn't going to be so good. And this got us talking, before we came on today, about just hospitality in general. And some of the best retailers or restaurants or hotels, there's an element that's in them that is very consistent throughout. And that is this concept of the ability and authority to solve a problem. There's like this element of ownership. Like when the customer comes in contact with us, how can we make everyone possible accountable for that person's experience? You think of like the Nordstroms in clothing, you think of Ritz-Carlton when it comes to hotels, Disney, right? Everyone is kind of responsible. And so that's one of the reasons I love the idea and the concept of having this level of accountability and ownership for every call that comes in, for every contact that comes in, and just increasing the environment and the temperature of accountability in an organization. So anything that does that, I think immediately will translate to a better experience and better reviews and all the things, better profits, right? All the things that come from that.
Absolutely. And every single one of those companies that you just mentioned have some sort of guiding principle that says, we're going to know what you need before you need it.
That's right.
And here's what's interesting is the game of knowing what you need before you need it in the service department, especially when it comes to phone calls, is not that hard. And here's why. I'll tell you right now. Actually, when we were talking to CallRevu before this conversation, they gave us a data point that said 38% of calls are going unanswered, whether it's being abandoned or getting straight to voicemail or getting mishandled by the wrong person. That means 38% of over 500 monthly service calls to the average dealership, and that's not taking into account all these large dealerships that have a lot more, but 38% of them are going unhandled. So if that's like the target problem, that 38% of your customers, which is almost 50%, are not getting what they need before they need it, which is just human connection on the other side, then that's like, we know the problem and the opportunity for solution. So I think like if we can map that as an industry and as a dealership, what we can do is we can see the customer beforehand and start to work toward the best, because some of those service calls are not just appointment calls, they're callbacks or vehicle check-in or anything like that. So mapping that to success and lifetime loyalty and high level of reviews and quality reviews is a real clear line for me.
Man, 38%. If you think about that, it's almost 4 out of 10 people don't get what they need when they call. I think when you put it that way, you're like, what business can survive that way? Well, we can, and we have an opportunity to improve. Is it time to bring the guests up?
You know what? I think that, because look, we can talk about this till we're blue in the face, but we got some real people that are practitioners that are in the dirt trying to figure out exactly how to serve customers, whether it be from the technology side, on the product side, or from the boots on ground side and training employees and tracking that back to success. So we're really excited to have Andrew Spitzer, COO, Spitzer Auto World, and Scott Bleasdale, VP of Product at CallRevu, joining us. Scott and Andrew, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. All right, Andrew, we've got a couple minutes. We went fast on our end of the show because we had to chat with you a little bit about the fact that you are a 4th generation dealer. You're the CEO of the company, and you've probably got some stories about customer satisfaction that you could tell from being a kid around the table. Grandpa's upset, dad's upset, anything like that. What's that been like over the years?
You know, we're not in this business because it's boring, right?
That's right.
So, you know, it's my first job. I was washing cars as a porter at our Cleveland CDJR store. And I knew then and there, it's like, all right, I like this. And it was always about the people. And with that, of course, you know, with people, you have anything that can happen. So, you know, as much as we like to think we're going to, you know, be a slam dunk every time, we have people on our side too. And sometimes we goof up, and, you know, it's been really nice to have a tool that we can lean on to help inspect what we expect.
It's awesome.
Scott, well, actually, wait. I'm not going to let you off that easy. I want to know, like, what is the best customer service, or even just the most fantastic customer problem you've ever had that you can remember from when you were a kid? Like, we want to hear some more stories from like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or from grandpa. You know what I mean? Like, you go all the way back to 1904. There's got to be something epic in there.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you know, we have 25 rooftops, so unfortunately, you know, things pop up. You know, I remember, you know, we had a porter, and he pulled into the detail because, you know, of course, you got to clean up the vehicle before you give the vehicle or the customer the car back. And you know, everyone has heard the story. They hit the gas instead of the brake.
Oh.
You know, they go into a bunch of wiper fluid, and you just see a mist and a cloud of fluid, and then you just see it drop on the car and the people around it. Hands on the heads, you're like, uh-oh. But
was that when you were? Is this a story about you?
Yeah.
He's like, so I was the porter.
I was the porter, and I remember this time. Hold on, it's coming to me. That's some porter.
Yeah, if Dad would have caught one of that one, that would have been a tough one for me. But
he's like, I might look a little different these days. Walk with a limp. All right, I just had to dig a little deeper on that one.
That's great. Scott, you've been, tell us a little bit about your time with CallRevu, and just from the side of the product side, you know, what your vision for, you know, how to serve the industry is.
Well, so I've been with CallRevu a little over a year, working on developing our product, and excited to be a dealer in these tumultuous times in which we find ourselves, because it makes my work really exciting and very challenging as well. But, you know, we've been focusing a lot at CallRevu in the last year and a half on service, because there's such a need in service for customers. How can I provide a better level of service to, you know, the customers coming into their service department, the ones scheduling an appointment, you know, making sure that they're staying on top of letting the customer know when their car is going to be ready, kind of just all the details to make sure it's a seamless experience. And it's actually, I've got to do this day in and day out. This is hard. The volumes of people you're dealing with. You guys referenced the ownership duration of vehicles keeps going up. All those cars, especially when they get older, they require a lot more service. People have to get to work to be operational, and they're relying on them to do that. And we've got a ton of stats that show that increase is just going up and up and up. One I'll just throw out here, just the calls that we've been monitoring through these automotive dealerships from January 2021 to today is up 138. This is like, these times have never been seen before, as long as we've been tracking calls going back to 2008.
Can you repeat that one time? I missed a little piece of that.
Yeah, sure.
What was that data point?
From January 2021 to today, the call volume going into 8%.
So
That's
did you say
more than double,
138% increase in call volume straight out?
Correct.
Wow.
Correct. It's just, and part of the reason why 38% of the calls go unanswered is because the volume is just going up and up and up.
Staffing.
Literally ringing off the hook. I recently I have a Volvo sitting in a red light, and my Volvo died. Well, I shouldn't say it died. The auto start stop kicked in, right? So it shut off to save fuel. But when I let off my foot off the brake, it didn't fire back up.
It really wanted to save fuel, right?
Failed. So I dealer. Guess what? It rang and rang and rang and rang. I had to hang up. Call back. It rang and rang and rang. I call back, get a receptionist, and I'm like, go find somebody. Drag them to the phone, and she did. And that's how I got somebody on the service call.
Oh,
they just can't answer the phone. There's just so many calls going. It's exciting, different, challenging times for the dealers, and CallRevue's here to try to help them kind of navigate through those waters and make sure they've got the tools that they need to provide great customer service and answer the calls, process those calls, make happy customers.
Yeah. Andrew, are you experiencing that? You said you had 20 plus rooftops. Are you experiencing that kind of call volume increases? Or are you just seeing that,
absolutely.
feeling that?
And it's just like you guys have laid out. People are keeping cars longer. So, a lot of it is just trying to wrap it around your head, because we're always so focused as dealers, like, all right, we got to sell cars, sell cars, sell cars. And, it's no secret, last couple of years, margins have been pretty good on the sales side. And with that, it's given us the flexibility to try some things on the service side that maybe we wouldn't have before. And, we like to say, we're planting seeds back there, and hopefully, if we nurture them, treat them right, eventually they'll grow into car deals on the other side. So, everything's been really just exponentially growing back in the fixed ops area. And for those obvious reasons. So, it's been good for us. It's all about the mentality you have towards it.
How can you talk us through, just so we can get a broad picture, can you talk us through how your stores kind of ingest service appointments, and whether that's mostly online or mostly through phone calls or walk-ins? Like, give us an idea for what the regular flow. Now I know you have a lot of stores, so that's going to vary from place to place, but how is it happening, and how ideally would you like it to happen?
Well, first and foremost, with something like service, you need to be convenient, right? No one wants to have, whether you're doing routine maintenance or you're there because something broke, you don't want it to be difficult. So you need to be easy to work with, first and foremost. And then,
so, I mean, but basically the like, do people primarily call for service?
Yeah.
Do you have online scheduling?
You're going to get a good amount of people that are going to schedule appointments online. Generally that's skewing towards the younger demographic, but above all else, you're probably punching in your phone. All right, dealership near me, or maybe you have a specific dealer and you're calling it. And that's how we do things. You get it done now. You don't have to worry about it. That is, unless they don't pick up the phone, right?
Right. Who's answering? So who is it? Who answers the calls when someone calls the store?
Yeah, usually we have a scheduler.
What is it?
Usually it goes to a designated scheduler for that, or possibly some multiple locations.
And so have you been experiencing like trouble, whether it's from staffing or just the ebb and flow of the day's traffic? Have you been experiencing just those challenges that Scott's talking about, of like trying to get to the call, make sure it gets answered, make sure it gets returned, and all that stuff?
Absolutely. And, the worst thing we can do, that I'm sure a lot of people watching right now are guilty of, is we assume. And you know what happens when we assume, right?
Spell it out, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we assumed for a while, and, we had CallRevu on the sales side, and then we started figuring out some of the hidden skeletons in the closet on the service side. And it was eye-opening,
Yeah, it's funny because sales continues to get the glory in a lot of interactions, whether that be new tools or that's a sales process or technology or anything like that, and our service departments a lot of times kind of get things secondhand, but it seems like the reprioritization of service due to the changes in the market and the changes in how many people are coming in to the service department are extremely important right now. There is a lot of there's a lot of efficiency that can kind of be picked up in the service department if things are moving really quickly. What are you seeing as far as like as you're learning what the missed opportunities are? What are you doing to recover some of those opportunities when maybe missed calls or mishandles or things like that outside of training that's actively pursuing a better customer relationship?
Yeah, well, the thing right off the rip that CallRevu provides us is efficiency. We could field a whole team of people listen to phone calls, for example, to see, all right, where are our weak points? But they do that for us. So really, we can pull up, get into the computer and see a hit list ready to go of, various things. One that really, makes us sick almost. And I'm sure a lot of people have gotten a bad CSI score and pop up in their email because your advisor promised something to a customer and then they didn't come through on the promise. And that stuff drives us crazy. And it's hard to inspect it if you don't have some kind of trail there. So that alone, like that's the low hanging fruit on how you can really curtail a lot of those bad experiences and keep them in the past. Because, on the sales side, maybe you see a customer once every 3 years, best case scenario, but in service, you might see them once a quarter. So, that's really we have to focus because those are the touch points that we need to maintain that relationship throughout their cycle.
So they're definitely, and I think we'll get a little bit more into some of the things that the product can do to help. But what are some overarching strategies? And this is either for Scott or Andrew. Like, what are some of the overarching strategies that a dealer can implement? Like right now, regardless of what system they're using, what are some of the things that the people that showed up can learn and maybe like turn their focus to start that process of, improving a little bit at a time?
I'll jump in there and take that one. So number one, staff, right? Have enough staff at the right times of day to make sure that calls can get answered. We've also looked at some of the data that we're getting across all of our customers, and we're seeing calls in the morning really high, right? People are wanting to bring their cars in to get service. They want to drop them off in the morning or whatever. You're going to need to make sure you have enough people to answer the phones. So you may have to staff a little more heavily in the morning time. We also see it pretty steady almost all day. So it's not like you can staff them heavy in the morning and then everybody go home, but so staff appropriately. And the next one really is to make sure that you have some sort of system that can alert you to issues quickly when it happens on a call. It's what Andrew was talking about earlier. We do that for him, but then take action on it. Don't just let them pile up in your inbox because you're getting a whole bunch of email. You got to stay on top of that stuff and address them, because let's face it, there's another service center, halfway across town, a little town, there's somebody else to do the work if they need to take their car somewhere to make sure they can get to work.
And the more time that goes by, right, the angrier you get, right? The more uneasy you get, and that makes it twice as hard. So timing is of the essence for sure. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
that's okay.
I was just kind of in my mind, like playing that out. Like we've all been in a situation where we're waiting for, and it doesn't even have to be an automotive, right? It could be like someone's supposed to show up and repair your fill in the blank, right? Or they said, oh, I'll let you know when the part comes in for your whatever. And the more time goes by without communication, when even if like a ping or a response to a request makes such a huge difference, but no information just already increases the anxiety and the negative experience.
It's really interesting because I hear that and I see that these types of opportunities, for some reason, whether it be at the manager or the frontline level, a lot of times are not prioritized. They kind of do. You said, like, they sit in your inbox, they pile up, things are happening. And it does. I mean, I remember being in the stores, like, it becomes a difficulty to go, man, there's 3 missed calls in the last 10 minutes, right? If it's 38%, you could perceivably see that in a busy time of the day. I guess, Andrew, what are you doing to ensure that your team is outside of just basic communication, but is keyed up to go, that's a really important thing sitting right there in front of me. Are you talking through what that customer means, not just in that moment, but future life cycle?
Yeah. And, to go back, as important as for the service manager and advisor to be bought in, I mean, the person in my chair absolutely has to be, because, if the guy with the name on his building doesn't care about service, I mean, heck, who
You're
else on the
done.
team will,
You're
right?
done,
But
right?
seriously, I mean, I know this firsthand because, we've grown a lot as a company over the last couple of years, and I've been able to see how other dealers do things. And it's just really become evident, like, all right, maybe other groups aren't looking at service departments like the way they should. And, I think, especially from an owner perspective, showing your face in a service department can make the world of a difference. Like, talking to a porter or a technician, that could be the difference between you losing that technician to one of your competitors or retaining them for a long time in your shop. So, it's kind of like what I touched on earlier. Mentality is everything. And if, your management ownership structure doesn't believe in it, or your general manager isn't bought in, then why is anyone else in the store going to be bought into it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Actually, drill into that for a minute, because in the spirit of wanting people to walk away with a little something, from this, regardless of what it's about, do you have like a routine or a cadence that you have where you're in the service lanes, or you're speaking to staff that are handling and serving service customers? Like, how would you explain your involvement back there? Because obviously you have a mentality that is focused on like personal connections.
Yeah, it's a people business. That's why I got into it. It's the first thing I noticed when I started washing cars when I was a kid, and that's what I liked about it. And I know as long as I surround myself with people better than me, I'm going to be all right. And I know the rest of the people at our stores will too. So, it's just so much that it's a people business. You need people, you need staff, and that's never been more critical than now. So, if a 5-minute conversation walking by with a technician makes a difference, I mean, that's it. It's just, you're never going to interrupt them when they're talking with a customer, but, hopefully everyone wears name tags. I got one here, people know I'm Andrew, so I can walk up and say, hey, Steve, how you doing?
Yeah.
And it's simple, 30, 60-second interaction. It can make someone's day even. And, it's powerful.
What, you just said, hey, we've got, it's hard to hire. Doesn't matter. I don't care what department it is. Everybody's been talking about technicians for 5 years, but now it's like, it doesn't matter what you're hiring for. It seems like it's more and more difficult, even with the layoffs in the tech sector. What can be done? I guess we'll kind of both sides, Andrew, from just the staffing perspective, and then from also Scott from the technology perspective. What can be done to leverage staffing or culture as well as technology to make sure that we don't have issues when we do have staffing shortages? Because those are bound to come up no matter how much we interview or look to hire or anything like that.
Yeah. Technology, work smarter, not harder, right? That's what people say. So, if we are in a pinch, there's technology that can help coverage for, late hours, off hours, for example. And that's something we definitely leverage when we have to. But, our preference is always have people, because at the end of the day, none of us want to pick up the phone and talk to a robot, right? We want to talk to a live person because we know it's probably going to get handled.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I would recommend a virtual BDC is a really good option for dealers that are seeing an increased call volume and they can't hire fast enough. As you said, it's so hard to find good people. You can't hire fast enough. You can easily set up the tech so that if calls can't be answered, instead of them going to voicemail or people just hanging up, they can roll over to a VBDC, which may exist offsite, but at least you get that human on the phone and they can still book that appointment for you. CallRevu has partners in the VBDC world, and we can hook you up and set all that up for you.
Yeah, and going off that, you can leverage it too, whichever side of the store you're on. Everyone just focuses on the low hanging fruit that's easy to take right in front of them, right? Well, what about the customers in your database that haven't been talked to in 6 months?
Yep.
Well, what if you could program something to reach out and maintain those touch points? Because your advisors aren't going to do it. Well, that's what the BDC will do for you.
Right.
That's been really fantastic as well, because we work so hard to even get the opportunity for an at bat with a customer, and if we're not following up, or we fumble the delivery, whatever it is, we work too hard to even get that opportunity. So it really can help recover some of those opportunities we lost.
This brings us back to kind of the topic and the word we used when we set up this conversation, and we talked about the word ownership and kind of its close cousin of accountability. Andrew, you mentioned that, like, you want to make sure that you have a culture of accountability. What does it look like? How do you keep the line accountable from, like, all the entry points where a customer could come in and like we talked about, somebody on the phone says, okay, I'll call you back, or they promise something, or they commit to something. And how are you able to keep people accountable and understand that, like, people are taking the right level of ownership, or if there's a breakdown in ownership, it can be coached? What does your process look like for that?
Yeah. I like numbers, and I like using facts, and being able
Sounds like a COO to me.
Yeah, right. So, that's it. If you're fair and clear with your expectations off the rip, and you back it up with data, I think it's easy to hold someone accountable. But, not to toot CallRevu's horn again, but, it's like, before we partnered with them, it's hard to do that in the service world unless you're there right next to someone experiencing it. So this allows us to, at the click of a button, find out who's making false promises to customers.
So explain to me how that actually works. Like, with a click of a button, and this is you, or this is a call center manager or a service manager. How exactly does that work?
Yeah. The technical aspect is a little beyond my skill set, but it's as simple as, hey, I don't have an answer for you right now, but I'm gonna call you back, and basically based on how they read the what words were used based on the conversation, they can follow through and say, hey, this person said they were going to call back, but they didn't, based on they're hooked up to your phones and everything, and through the CRM, hey, they never called back. This person's been ghosted,
So you get flags saying, hey, somebody said these words, like, I promise, or I'll call you back, or something like that. A return call never got logged, never happened. So that throws up a flag and says, like, hey, we have an unanswered promise that we made, and then you or somebody else can get on that. Is that what you're saying?
Yep. And that extremely high urgency, because if someone breaks a promise for you, they're not going to come back, right?
Yeah.
What from the product side, Scott? Like, how is that? How is that built out, and what are the things that you see as opportunities to iterate on that and provide more data and more information to these service and sales departments so that they can maintain that customer life cycle?
Yeah. So first, I don't have time to go into how we sort of do the magic
The data. Yeah. Don't worry about the magic. Don't worry about the magic. We'll let the magic be the magic.
But
it's complex. But yeah, look, this conversation has taken sort of many turns and got lots of people talking. It's difficult to necessarily, it's easy for a human to listen to a phone call and go, oh yeah, they were supposed to follow up with them right at the end of the call. It sort of didn't complete the call. The transaction didn't complete. There's something that was taken offline. Someone's going to go look something up, or find something, or validate some price, or whatever the case may be, and then follow back up. We have technology that can do that automatically. It's pretty dang accurate. It's actually scary how smart these computers are getting these days. So that's one thing. But we're also looking at other forms of, call it a broken promise or a bad follow-up, if you want. When customers are calling and asking, dude, where's my car? Like, you failed them. You already failed them, because you should have been proactively contacting them, right? To say, hey, your car isn't going to be done today, or we're still waiting on parts, or whatever the case may be. Staying on top of those communications is really smart. And when you don't, you failed. It's not that you've really broken a promise. at least not explicitly, but kind of implicitly you have, because you left that customer in the lurch. So we're looking for those types of conversations as well, and many of them like that. And we'll flag those and bring up some statistics as well as the individual call details to let guys like Andrew and his service managers know and see where that data is coming from, and they can then start to follow up on that and start driving those numbers down. Right? How many status check calls did I get last week versus this week? Am I getting better or not? What am I doing?
I feel like we should call you. Like, I'm going to give this right now. This is a freebie for everybody on the call and for Scott and the call review team. Stop calling them status checks. This is the Dude Where's My Car campaign, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, someone's got to run a campaign about Dude Where's My Car, and that we've solved the Dude Where's My Car issue, because I think that that's a major issue for customers. They just want to know what's up. And I remember from being in the dealership, and Andrew, you can probably confirm, but the majority of your service calls, even though we like to think that they're for appointments, is actually for follow-up. It's that reverse inbound call that's saying, hey, I need to know what's going on, or I need to pay, or I'm going to pick up, or any of those secondary items that isn't just an initiation on an appointment, because we have driven so many people to online appointment scheduling. So it's like as an industry, solving Dude Where's My Car is a big deal. So I think, managing to that in the dashboard, but also figuring out how you can also market to that if you have begun to solve that, is a big opportunity for service departments, because that's one of the pain points. It's not just that you're paying, it's that you don't know what's going on, right? It's not knowing what the doctor's doing. And that's never the place that you want to be. Andrew, is that kind of the way that you see a lot of service calls as you're starting to track this data? Are you seeing a lot more, or is it kind of balanced on the initial inbound and the follow-up stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it really varies. It's all about what kind of team you have. I'm not going to say all of our teams are great. I think we're great. We're good and we're getting better, but some are just better than others. So, what it really does, it allows you to calibrate and assess where you're at. And from there, you can make a strategy and make a plan, and then it's up to you to execute it.
All right. We have a question from an audience member. The question comes from Ryan Kite. And the question is, should missed calls be tracked as a metric alongside other metrics like lost sales? What do you both think?
The short answer, I'll take that one. The short answer is absolutely, right? But you should also define a missed call. Almost every dealership, and I'm assuming Andrews does as well, has what we call an IVR, or interactive voice response system. So when you call, you do get a machine that sort of answers and says, hey, do you want to talk to somebody in sales or service or parts or finance or what have you, so that they can direct your call to get to the right person as quickly as possible. That is not an answered call, right? So if they press 2 to go to service and the phone rings and rings and rings, and whether it goes to voicemail or not, if it doesn't get somebody on there that's getting them where they want to go, including a receptionist, it's not an answered call. And if it gets to service and nobody ends up picking up that call, whether they leave a voicemail or not, especially if they don't, that's a missed call. And you absolutely want to be tracking those and following back up with those customers.
Yeah, in my eyes, it's the same thing as, if you had a customer walk in your showroom and they're checking out the cars and no one ever even says hi to them, and then they walk out. It's the same difference. Like, you got to watch it for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because one seems to be right in front of you and the other one seems to be far away. But with the call, it's actually still right in front of you, because this is a digital ecosystem. This is a digital showroom where people are interacting with our business, whether that be to search for a car or to set an appointment or to call back. And I think that retuning our managers and our people's mentality to say, like, hey, these have equal footing in our desire to serve our customer community is a really important move. And I think, like, this is, and I, I'd love to hear from Scott. I haven't seen the back end of the CallRevu platform in quite a minute, but we kind of emphasize dashboards and kind of reporting and how everything looks on the sales side a lot. But have you all looked at what a dashboard looks like, from a service perspective, that's just like always on attention to what's happening, what's not happening, and so that people can assess that in the service lane?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we built one. I don't know if you know that, but
That's awesome.
now you do, Kyle.
Yeah, I do.
You may not have seen it, but yeah, we built a service-specific dashboard for exactly that reason. It is a single stop where a service director can go and say, what is going on today? What happened yesterday? And look at key metrics that matter to them most, like how many calls did I miss? At what hour of the day did I miss those calls? How many calls went to voicemail? Same question there. How many status check calls am I getting? How many repeat callers am I getting? If people are calling multiple times in the same day, that's probably because they're not getting the answer that they're looking for. They're not getting connected to the right person. So what's going on there? Who are those people? What are they calling about? And then do I need to get in touch with the service advisor and make sure that they follow up so that those customers don't end up getting angry, right?
I mean, the dashboard
all of
numbers that are
that.
sexy in service are always CP dollars per RO, lines per RO, right? And closing rate on recommended services. And I think that what the reality is that for me, those type of numbers that you're talking about are actually the sexy ones, because they're the ones that actually lead to the results.
Indicators. Yeah.
You know, they're the indicators to the results.
Correct.
I love it. I love it. Hey, if anyone does have questions, you can, similar to Ryan, go ahead and enter them in the chat to the right of the video, and we'd be glad to answer those questions. We have a few minutes left. We've got a couple more things to review, but we would love if anyone does have the questions in the audience, specifically about product or about process, that we can ask either Andrew or Scott. We'd love to answer those, but we'll keep moving other than that, and we'll have our team kind of move those through. But we do have that Q&A session open for the next 10 minutes as we get to wrapping up. One of the last things is measuring the impact of quality service, of quality hospitality, of creating this. What are the measurement points that are a lot further out, maybe in retention or CSI or anything else influencing other business sectors, Andrew, that you're tracking right now that are saying, hey, our efforts in these micro moments are leading to macro success for our business? What are some of those things that you can tie a straight line to success with?
Yeah, I mean, we're new car dealers, so the first thing we're going to look at is, CSI. Like, that's a huge thing, especially, if you're looking to grow as a dealer, of course, your sales efficiency, effectiveness, whatever the jargon is for your OEM, that's going to be important, but they're placing more and more weight in how are you taking care of the customer. So right off the rip, like that's something that we're able to look at, and it's, it's not even us looking at the report, it's a third party telling us, hey, this is how you're doing based on how your customers are telling you. So that's a great way that we can hold ourselves accountable. And, we've been able to track our progress since we've gone live with the tool to see how we're getting better and where we still need to improve.
That's awesome.
So we had mentioned this earlier. Actually, we started talking about the labor shortage and a lot of things that people are dealing with. Just getting the right people in the right seats. Andrew, you mentioned, losing people to competitors if they're not feeling, that they have a place, or if they're not feeling really appreciated. What are you doing to address the labor shortage? How much? Let's start this way. Do you feel like you're fully staffed right now?
No.
Okay. He's like, that's a joke, right?
Everybody would have been like, hold on, we're coming to your stores. Let us know how you
absolutely
did it.
Right? That would have been a trail. I asked the question because I've asked questions or assumptive questions before, and people are like, oh no, actually we're fully staffed. And they're like, okay. So you don't feel like you're fully staffed in the service side of the business. And where do you feel like the biggest efficiencies are?
I mean, techs have been it's everywhere, because, you need technicians to fix cars. Mm-hmm. Being a service advisor, that's the toughest position in a dealership, let alone service, because you're dealing with unhappy people a lot because they're in a situation.
Sometimes on both sides.
Yeah, right. No, exactly. Internal affairs, that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, it's just tough. Mm-hmm. It's a tough business, and it's tough to find people. And And, no one starts a job and they're like, yeah, I can't wait to be bad at this. It's
Yeah.
people want to be good at what they do. It makes them help and it lets you be fulfilled. People have an inherent desire to do something fulfilling. And,
Right.
this allows us to train our people better so that they can better themselves and be prepared for that upset customer so they can diffuse the situation. And, we always talk about turning assassins into apostles. The same person that goes and they're looking to take you out, if you can flip them, they're going to sing your praises forever.
I love that. That's a
Yeah.
good one. I'm writing
cool.
this one down.
Yo, we're making a shirt that says "Turn assassins into apostles" right there. That's legit.
Send me one. I wear a large.
Yeah.
Way better than "Dude, Where's My Car?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
CallRevu, you got your next branding play is
Just
"Dude,
teeing
where's
you
my
right
car?"
up.
Just
Assassins
giving it to
into
you.
apostles.
Assassins into apostles.
Get that right down.
Oh man, that's great. No, man, I love how you brought up that people want to feel successful. They don't want to feel like they've failed at their career or their job, and giving them the tools to tell them what success looks like on the other side, even if they're not successful right now, at least points them in the right direction so that they can continue to be successful. And a tool that says, hey, look, here's the opportunities, here's the gaps. We can solve those. This is a solvable thing. And you getting better at this actually enhances not just the organization, but you as an individual. I think that's a key point. And, I will say, like, you think about big tech companies and how they acquire people. They say, hey, we give you all the tools to be successful. And I think calling some of that out in our shop, like, hey, if you have, everybody knows they get the recording, call may be recorded for quality and training purposes, right? That's kind of like, it's just in every industry now. But leveraging how you use that to make people successful, I think can actually be, it can not just leverage how you serve your customers, but also how you serve your current or future employees. Like turning that into a success story, I think is something that we should be thinking about how any technology we have in the store, especially one that has a coaching tool and the ability to find gaps and find missed opportunities for revenue, is an important way to communicate with our employees.
The stuff we're talking about, so whether it's, just the accountability tools, the VBDC, you think about handling the assassins well, to be able to turn them into apostles, and making sure just people are generally cared for the moment they show up, the moment they call, the moment they send an email. To make sure they're cared for requires a level of just, I don't know, emotional energy, let's call it. And most of the time when people get frustrated at their job or with the situation at their job, the frustration is kind of like the emotional energy in their tank has been drained to zero. And now it's time to like let you know how I really feel. When usually if that emotional energy tank is full, right, there's just more buffer in there. And it feels like some of these tech tools, and like I was just saying, leveraging the tech is something that helps with the labor situation, because it actually helps when customers are informed and they feel like they're handled well. They are just more pleasant to deal with, right? And they should be, right? They deserve to actually be upset when there's not good communication. And so there's almost this thought of like preserving the staff that you have and making it a great place to work is really a pretty direct tie-in to leveraging tech tools like this in order to preserve the emotional energy. Am I making sense with that?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
No, you got it. He's like
halfway through it. I was like, we gotta land this plane and we're gonna keep circling. Yeah.
Hey, as we wrap up, Scott, I'd love to hear from you just a little bit about maybe the recent innovations that CallRevu has come out that maybe some people even on the platform might not know that they would have access to, or that they should be talking to their any customer success person, or things that are just on the horizon that maybe you can talk about, and the things that you've recently worked on or are currently working on that dealerships can leverage to create better successes.
Yeah, so I'll mention a couple of things. Actually, I want to start with the thing that ties right back to what Paul was just talking about, which is being able to encourage the service advisors who, as Andrew said, they have the hardest job in the dealership. Encourage them to continue to improve. They want to be good at their job. They've got a really hard job. They probably have a lot of bad days. So encouraging them, giving them some statistics that show them that they're getting better at their job, that they're getting fewer status check calls, that they're missing fewer calls, that they have fewer complaints. All of those things help them, encourage them, and make them better employees and probably stick around longer. And again, we don't have to beat the drum of hiring anymore. It's already hard enough to replace them, so you don't want to lose those guys. You want to encourage them. And we're building some additional reporting to show specifically how are those service advisors doing. On the sales side, we always just kind of call them generically employee performance reports. We're building service advisor performance reports, so specifically looking at the stuff that service advisors care about and need to know that they're communicating well, how they're communicating well with their customers, or where they're not. And then we have built-in coaching, and we also partner with training companies that can come in and use that information to help train those service advisors so that they understand and can get better at doing their job more efficiently and more effectively, almost like it's a natural instinct of theirs, which some of them have to, really work hard to develop. So that's some of what we're doing. The other pieces of what we're doing is, and I'll just sort of generically wrap it up into one big bucket of just machine learning. Machines are getting really, really, really smart. We've all heard of Chat GPT. If you haven't heard of Chat GPT, you're living literally under a rock. That is not what we use internally, but its technology is very similar in nature, and they're getting really smart. And so we can actually analyze calls in new ways that we couldn't do before. And we can do that across multiple calls, and we can look at things much more broad data. We can look at all of Andrew's calls and see different trends and things that he's doing that he wasn't doing before, different topics that come up on conversations that weren't before. We can identify trends and things there was no way that any human or machine could do before. That's going to service some additional information to guys like Andrew, so we can look at that and go, oh wow, this is a topic that keeps coming up with customers. We've been mishandling this all along. I need to get this information in front of my guys so that we can sort of get ahead of this and beat our competitors, whether it's in selling cars or servicing cars or whatever. So those are the kinds of big ticket items that we're working on, leveraging some latest and greatest technologies to get us there really quickly.
Awesome. Well, it has been a heck of an hour, and we've gone through more than I thought we were going to get through. So, Andrew and Scott, thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks to the CallRevu team for helping us just educate and give some useful tools. I feel like there were a few practical things that people may be able to take back, whether it's a dude where's my car campaign, a t-shirt campaign, or some practical ways to use dashboards to ensure that your customers are cared for and your employees are cared for as well. You both gave us a ton of great insights into that. So thank you very much, and just appreciate that. With that, we're going to send it back to Anne Marie to wrap us, and thank you all for being here.
See you guys.
All right, everyone. Thank you again to Scott and to Andrew for joining us. And thank you to all of you for joining us for another ASOTU Edge webinar. And thanks to our friends at CallRevu. If you missed anything or you just want to see it again, you can always go to our website, www.asotu.com, and you can replay them all there. We'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.